Welcome back to the Not Yet Adults podcast. This is, of course, a podcast where we navigate the arduous road that hopefully leads to adulthood, starring myself, Eric Zayas, and the inconceivable Collin Geffrey. How you doing, Colin?
I'm good. Why am I inconceivable, though? Like, what does that really mean?
I don't know. I felt like I was the one and only times three. You need to be the inconceivable. It was the only logical option. Every time you intro, if I'm going to have a thing, you gotta have a thing when I intro.
I'm not undermining that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm just saying, like, how do we get to inconceivable? Like, where was the line?
Well, it just felt right in my heart. I was just acting for my heart, and it felt right. And I don't need to explain myself.
Side note, we should do, like, an 80s movie opening credits montage for every episode, where it's, like, featuring the Not Yet Adults podcast, starring Eric the Dingo Zayas, and Colin Buffalo Bill Geffrey or whatever. Like, we all have weird, and introducing Billy the Kid Harrington, or like just weird names, you know? That'd be fun.
Yeah. If you want to put in the extra work, you want to put in hundreds of extra hours of editing work to add to the
I don't know if it'd be hundreds. It'd probably be an hour or two. I don't know. I just think it could be funny as a one-off. Well, here's what we'll do: like 60 or 70 episodes from now when people have just forgotten about it. How's your week going, buddy? We're recording this on a Friday. The week is coming to a close. How's your week been?
It was basically a Halloween week. Tuesday was Tuesday Halloween? Oh, now I'm forgetting. Tuesday was the 30th, so it was like the night before Halloween when I was getting my costume ready and everything. Wednesday was Halloween. I went to a friend's party, and one of my friends was Bob Marley. I met another friend.
Wait, you're friends with Bob Marley?
I'm friends with Bob Marley.
Wow, humble brag. Holy cow.
Yeah, I can't communicate with ghosts, so I'm friends with him beyond the grave. And so, yeah, basically I was hanging out with Bob Marley and Totoro, and I went as this alien, and I modified my suit. I had like an alien morph suit. I modified the face part so I could see and breathe through it because I couldn't before. And I kind of ruined the suit. And so I just had like, basically my face was exposed through this green morph suit. So to cover that, I put green face paint over it, and it looked bad. It looked awful.
So are you retiring the alien suit then?
I might have to. It's destroyed. I'm going to have to figure out something. Maybe next year I'll go as a sexy vampire or something. I don't know. What about you, Colin? How have you been? What have you been up to? What's your life like now?
Yeah, my life has been very similar to how it's been the last few weeks. I went on a couple interviews. We'll see how those turn out. I Tuesday went to the new Halloween movie with my family.
Did you like it?
I did not like it. They did. I thought it was not great. We can talk about why off air if you want, but I didn't think it was a very good movie personally, but I'm not a huge fan of the original Halloween either, so I wasn't really expecting to like it, and it about met expectations, I guess. My dad just got back from a business trip to Florida, and he's sick, and now I woke up today and I'm sick, so that's fun. And my brother stayed home from school today and he's sick, and my mom just got over being sick, so it's just great. It's so good. So, Eric, you have a topic prepared for this week, as I understand.
I thought this week we'd talk about the concept of home. I mean, I know people usually don't think of home as a concept, and I know we've talked about home before in previous episodes, specifically the first episode, which is titled Welcome Home, where we talk about coming back home from school. But I thought, we talk about home as like in like an abstract sense, in the sense of like what it means to us, what it means in different contexts. And I mean, there's the classic saying, the home is where the heart is, but like, is that true in every case? What does that mean exactly?
It's complicated. It at face value, I think it's an easy question to answer, but when you really think about it, and as you get older, it changes a lot. I feel like when I was a kid, it was very simple. Home is the house where me and my family live. That's like, it was just a very, very cut and dry. That was the thing. And then you get a little bit older and you start spending less time around your family, more time around friends and other people. And you spend less time, quote unquote, at home. And then maybe you move, maybe you go away to school, all these things. And it gets a lot harder to put in a box what home is. I don't think you have one home. I think the older you get and the more broad your life gets, it's like there's a little piece of home in a bunch of different places. And so yeah, I don't think it's an easy one. You mentioned on the episode last week, as I was talking about Sacramento, you said, do you think Sacramento is your home? And that was a tough question for me, because I was like, man, I never think about it that way, but I definitely, like, when I'm in Spokane, I'm like, man, I wish I could go to California right now. And when I'm in California, I'm never like, man, I wish I could go back to Spokane. It's I think you kind of leave little pieces of you at places that either you spend a long time, or were important to you at a certain point in your life. And I think those kind of come together to create this sort of abstract, weird idea of what we think of as home.
Yeah, I think it definitely changes for people, like not just as you grow older, but also for people who like move a lot, like people who are army brats and move all the time, so they could have like, they could settle in a place and they get used to it, and that'll be their home, and then they have to move, and it's like, oh, now home is this new place, and so it's very jarring. I was fortunate enough to that my dad retired from the military like when I was like young, so we didn't move a whole lot at all. We were just like we've moved like once since I was a kid, and it was another place in Washington, so it wasn't even that drastic of a change. It was like driving distance from the previous place we'd lived. So should we talk about first like all the different places we moved, or like the different types of homes? Because I feel like it's not just like home can be different depending on the context surrounding why you're living there.
I mean, home could be just the place where you feel most like yourself. Home could be the place that you like to spend the most of your time. It doesn't necessarily have to be a physical thing. Home could be, a feeling. Home could be a group of people. Home could be a state of mind. It's really hard to put that in a box. I feel like often we kind of generalize it and say, oh, it's this house that we live at. But the reason it's that house that you live at is because that's where you have these certain feelings and these certain people live and all that stuff. And so I feel like we kind of take that for granted a little bit. I do want to say, you mentioned sort of the military family, and sort of how that works, and people moving often. And obviously, you're always going to be kind of jealous or envious of what you don't have. The grass is always greener. But I will say there's something kind of appealing to me about that lifestyle, sort of getting to start over every few years, and just moving on, just kind of, broad horizons. You go out and see a little bit more of the world every couple of years. I think that's kind of an interesting idea. And I know that there's, a wide array of problems that come with that, of not really being able to put roots down anywhere, not being able to keep friends and relationships for a long time. I not for a second I'm saying that's an easy way to live, but there has always been something kind of appealing about that to me.
I think when you're like younger and you're like still a kid and still developing, you need like a certain amount of stability, and that makes that kind of difficult. I don't really know all the psychology about it. I feel like that to me as an adult sounds like a much more interesting concept than it would have as like a kid, because as a kid you just want to be like, okay, this is home, this is like where I live, this is where I go to school, this is the friends I know. But as an adult, it's like, oh, I would love traveling, I would love to have a job where every couple of years I move to a new place and stuff, at least when I'm like ready for that, like, and can afford that. That would be really cool. But
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, like, when I was 7 and we moved from Sacramento to Spokane, I remember being very kind of bitter about the whole thing and not really understanding, like, well, why do we have to move? This is where my friends are. We have all our family here. Like what's really going on? And as a kid, it's can be really hard to grasp that.
the one big move I made when I was a kid was when we moved from Spanaway to Ording, and I don't remember exactly how. I think I was against it, but then when we moved, I like quickly got used to it and appreciated it. And then like now, every time there's a big move, I'm like, looking forward to it as opposed to looking against it, because you know, it's a new place. It's like I am in control of where moving into this new place I'm gonna be living at pretty soon. I'm in control of that and moving with people I know, so that I feel like that would be a good home. And like for the last couple of years, like home has been kind of split. At least when I went to college, because it was like home, like there was a home I lived at where family was there, and that was like a place I wasn't at very often because I was at school so much. Like that's where home's supposed to be, because that's where my family is and stuff. But like because I did so much stuff at school, like that became my new home, and also I was living there for most of the time. So it was like, home was like two different places for two different reasons.
So your family lives relatively close to PLU. where we went to school. They were like, what, 40, 45 minutes away? About that?
Like closer to like 35 to 40, yeah.
Okay, so well within driving distance. How often did you get back to see them while you were at PLU?
I think it was like we got in a routine where I'd be there like once a week because I worked on the weekends, and also my job is pretty close to where they are, where I'm living right now with them. So I think like if I remember correctly, I at least Saturday night, Sunday morning, spend the night, and then go to work. And yeah,
So for you, was there much of a divide there? Was it like PLU's my home and I see them occasionally, or because they were in such close proximity, did it kind of just blur together?
I mean, it was definitely felt like a distinct difference because there's different environment, and you know how like you act differently when you're in different places and around different people. So it's definitely felt different. It wasn't a huge divide. It wasn't like people whose home were like, states away or countries away, which is nice. Like if I wanted to go home, I could drive there. But yeah, it was definitely like there was a divide.
Well, and it's interesting, and I say this all the time, but the best thing about this podcast is like the different perspectives you and I have on things. And being in Spokane, my first year of college, went home twice. Once in Christmas and once at the end of January for January break. And I remember about I mean, I always say the joke of like, I got off the plane in Spokane, used to it being 35, 40 degrees in Tacoma, and it was 4 degrees in Spokane when I stepped off the plane. And I was like, take me back, just take me right back. Let's just head on back. Cause I was like, I just don't want to be here. But a while, I don't remember if it was Christmas break or January break, but I was like, I just don't feel, I just feel like a fish out of water here. Like, I feel like I used to belong here and this is just not my place anymore. And that was a weird feeling, and that was something that I'd had friends and older people in my life that told me that was going to happen, and that sort of being away at college for that first year is formative in that way because your world suddenly gets bigger. You see what's out there, and suddenly home isn't all there is anymore. But that was tough, man. That's an interesting feeling. I remember at the end of the first year at PLU dreading summer vacation. I was like, I just am not looking forward to this at all. I want to stay here. I just want to keep going. And that was weird. That's hard because that idea of home kind of blurs of like, of course my family's back in one place and I love them and care about them very much, but this is where my life is, and it's really hard to just pull the plug on that all of a sudden.
So did you consider school more like home to you in the sense of like it was the place that you at for those few years prefer to be?
Yeah, I don't know how to verbalize it. It wasn't really my dorm per se. It wasn't the physical space I lived at. It was just the things I did at school and the people that I knew at school. Uh, it was my everyday life. It was, I guess, routine maybe is a good way to put it. I got into the routine of it, and so that just felt like all I really knew. And I'm very much someone that I like being productive. I like hitting the grind and getting stuff done. And so, uh, when I would have to go back to Spokane, it just felt like the wind was taken out of my sails. I'm like, okay, well, what now? Like, I can't make videos. I can't do live streaming. I'm not seeing all these people I see every day. I'm not working on stuff for classes. Like, what do I actually do? And I had like not identity crisis, but just like I just hit a wall. I feel like I have no motivation to do anything or no ability to do anything. When I was back at my folks' house, and yeah, so that was weird. I mean, I don't really know. It's a tough question.
I think when people hear the home is where the heart is, they assume that heart means like family or like the people you love. But I feel like home can be just the place where your life is or where you do stuff, where you feel like you have a purpose. Some people move countries away to go to a new place for work, and it's, you're not moving there because you're like people you love is there. You don't know anyone there, but you're moving there because this is where I'm moving, not just to make money and be financially stable, but also, because this is where I have stuff to do. This is where I will have like, I'll be functional. I'll be doing stuff on a regular basis. This is where I like have like some sort of course to follow, so to speak, like routine, like you said.
Well, and like when you go somewhere, whether it's on like a trip or a vacation or whatever, you're kind of doing that with this idea in the back of your mind that this is limited, like this is on a clock. I'm putting in this much time, whether you're enjoying it or not. I'm putting in this much time, and then I go back to home or where I live or whatever. And when you move away somewhere, you can't go about it with that mindset. You can't just go back. It's not a short reprieve. It's like you're here now. You got to commit to this. And that can be the hardest part of like just resting and realizing, I'm here for the foreseeable future. I have to treat this as that. It can't just be I'm going to sprint through this until I'm done. Cuz obviously it doesn't work like that. I remember as a kid, when I'd have to go visit my biological father, that was the only time in my life I can remember being homesick. And that wasn't because I hated the house or anything, but it's because I'm around people I don't want to be around. And like you wanting to be, I want to go be with my family. I want to go be with my friends. And so that was homesick, not for a house or a location, but a people and a feeling. And yeah, that's tough to go through.
I was curious, where have all the where like because I know we've like gone through this in previous episodes, but so you originally were from Sacramento. Where are all the different places you've been throughout your life that you've like as far not just for traveling, but like as far as places you've called home or have been like established households?
So we moved twice in Sacramento. We lived in a small house when I was born, and then when I was about 3 or 4, my sister was born. We moved into a bigger house, and then when I was 7, we sold that bigger house and built a house up in Spokane. No, and then I was probably I'm gonna say 12 or 13 when because my mom never liked that house. It had some issues, and basically we were told a few things about it that ended up not being true, and it just did not work out. I think it was just builders trying to cut corners because everyone's out to make a buck. But anyways, we moved out of that house into an apartment for a year, which was a lower class, not low. I'm gonna say lower middle class, 2-bedroom apartment for a family of 5, which was tight. It was packed to say the least. But we stayed there for a year while our next house was being built, and then we moved into that next house, which is where we are now. When I was about 14, and then when I was 18, of course, I went away to PLU, and I was there for a couple of years. But that's sort of the history, the timeline of places that I've lived. What about you? I know Spanaway is where you were born, right?
Actually, no. Where I was born is a place in Wisconsin called Tomah, Wisconsin.
Tomah, Wisconsin.
Yes. And whenever I tell people where I was born, they're like, "Oh, you're a cheesehead," and it's like, "Well, I don't remember any of it." So, I mean, I guess, but I moved to Washington when I was 3. I literally have no recollection of Wisconsin whatsoever. And then I've heard that we lived in Olympia for like a few months. Like that was the first place we like stayed, and then we're like, okay, I guess we just got like an apartment, and then we moved to Spanaway. And Spanaway, I remember, of course, that's where I started school. I went to preschool at Evergreen Elementary. Or no, sorry, I went to preschool at like Spanaway High because they had like a preschool program for like a year, and then I went to Evergreen Elementary, which was walking distance from my house in Spanaway, and I lived there for like I want to say 10 years or maybe more. I can't remember. Maybe it had to be more actually. Then I went to Cedar Crest Junior High, and when I went to Cedar Crest Junior High, even though that's in Spanaway, I had moved to Ording, so the commute was like 45 minutes like every morning. It was horrible because I went to school in Spanaway but was lived a whole different place. And thinking about it as an adult, the commute could have been shorter. I think we just never used GPS. We went like a longer route that was necessary, but whatever. So of course at this point I'm living in Ording. I've lived there for a few years, and then went to obviously PLU, and moved to Tacoma for that, and that was about when I was like 20 or 21, because my first 2 years at college were Pierce Community College to get my associates. Sorry, I'm just trying to remember this as I'm like saying it. Yeah, and then I went there for a few years, and now I'm living back at home in Ording, but about to move back in Tacoma because Tacoma. It's funny, like before like going to Tacoma for school, I kind of thought of Tacoma as like, it sounds really bad, but as like kind of not a place I'd like to live because it's like kind of there are like sketchy neighborhoods in it.
No, you're thinking of Parkland. You're thinking of Parkland.
Not even Parkland, like parts like in the heart of Tacoma, or like not like in the city part of Tacoma, it's like sketchy. And of course, the place I go to school is in Parkland, which is considered like
Parkland is the Compton of the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, but anyways, I think as I lived there, I loved Tacoma more because I was doing stuff more in Tacoma and I saw more of it and appreciated the city. And now I made plans to like move there and live there. So
See, that's interesting because you like, and part of this was obviously you had a car, but you, while you were at Peel, you got out and did stuff and saw things in Tacoma and sort of experienced the city. I spent probably well over 99% of my time on PLU campus. I almost like never left the campus because I didn't have a car, and anywhere within walking distance of PLU is kind of terrible. And so like that my world felt in some ways bigger because I was away from home for the first time, but on the other hand, it felt like my world was like 3 by 4 blocks big, and that was a weird feeling of like, oh, I can walk, and then you kind of just hit a wall. It was like being in a video game where like the world size is really small, and you like hit the wall, and you're like, huh, well, that's something. But yeah, that's interesting. Eric, we've talked about sort of home over the years and home in sort of an abstract sense. I mean, you're at a transitional phase right now. You're in the process of moving out. Where's home for you right now, or what is home for you right now? I mean, how do you foresee that changing in the next couple of months here as you move out and get your own place and all that? What does home kind of mean to you now?
well, home is definitely where I'm sitting right now in my bedroom in Ording. But as I moved back from college, I kind of felt like, even though this is obviously very familiar, I've lived here for years before going to PLU because PLU was such a long experience. I feel like moving back, it always felt temporary for me. Like I'm just staying here until I get my new place. Not that that's gonna be immediate, not that it should be immediate, but um, and I feel like I've just recently settled back in, and of course, as I settled back in here, I just got an opportunity to move away, and so when I move away to Tacoma, which of course is still driving distance from home, from this home, like I anticipate that you know will be considered my new home in not too long. Not just because of the literal reason, but also because of like that's where I have friends, that's where I'm doing stuff, and it's kind of like PLU where it's like that was home because that's where you're doing stuff, and now that I'm in Tacoma, since I'll be like moving back in here, like every other night, or not every other night literally, but very often I would be driving to Tacoma to hang out with friends, and so I was still doing that back and forth commute as if I was like going to school. But since I'll be living with friends, I won't be doing that commute, so I'll feel like I'll be pretty stationary and pretty content.
Right. Then it'll be the reverse. You'll be commuting to where you are now, or not commuting, but you know what I mean. Like to see your family. Yeah, it's an exciting time, man. It really is. I'm really curious to kind of pick your brain about that over the next few months here and see sort of how that shifts for you. Because like for all intents and purposes, the new place you're going to be staying at and those people are going to be home,
Yeah.
and that's weird. That's not really a paradigm shift. I don't think we've experienced personally yet. You mentioned sort of getting back to your parents' place and sort of feeling like it's temporary, and that really hit on a note for me of like I have literally boxes of stuff from PLU that I haven't unpacked because I just like I don't want this to feel permanent. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I want to be uncomfortable to a certain degree of like, okay, don't just slouch off and stop trying, and suddenly you blink and you're still here years from now. You need to have a certain level of discomfort so that you're motivated to keep looking for work, keep looking for an apartment, stuff like that. And that's something I think about every day. It's just like, just don't get comfortable, man. Just have that healthy level of discomfort there, because that kind of keeps you going. But yeah, I don't really know what home is now. In a lot of ways, I think home is still kind of PLU for me. I feel like I mean, I graduated at a young age, and I didn't spend that long at PLU. I spent 2 years where a lot of people spend 4, and so like I'm still kind of playing catch up there a little bit. Um, because I think about that all the time, and I'm like, ah, man, what I wouldn't give to go back and do this or do that or whatever. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I think in some ways we do always play catch up. We don't like quite appreciate the home we have, the life we have until we've moved on to the next home or the next life. And then it's like, ah, man, what about that thing that I used to have that I never really thought about that much? But I don't know, man. I don't know if we have a big takeaway or a big This is what you should know about this episode. I think this might just be kind of an abstract.
What are you talking about? You just had an amazing takeaway where you said, like, you don't appreciate the home you have until you've moved on to the next place.
That's like so like generic and trite. Like I've heard like every Bob Dylan song say that.
If it sounds cliched, that's just because a lot of people have said it throughout the years, and that's because people have said it throughout the years so often because it's so true.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's your take. That's your artistic interpretation of what happened. I will say, I feel this is. I'm debating whether or not I want to say this because I think this is going to come across as really like angsty and edgelord, and I don't intend for it to come across that way. But I do feel like home is kind of wherever I am. Does that make sense? Like just kind of wherever I go, that's home.
It's kind of like the saying, "Wherever you go, there you are."
Yeah, I guess it is like that. Yeah, but like I don't know if that's being adaptable or just being open minded, but I feel like ever since like I'm gonna say like 11 or 12, like it was just kind of like wherever I went, I was like not really homesick, not really trying to get anywhere else. It was just I'm where I am. It wasn't until I came back to my parents' house after a little bit of PLU that I really felt homesick for the first time in a while. That was like, oh man, I actively want to be somewhere that I'm not right now. But for the most part, I feel like home's kind of just wherever I am.
Wherever you like rest your coat. Home is wherever you put your coat.
Yeah, that's true. So home is in my closet?
Yes. You live in your closet.
That's weird. That opens up all sorts of baggage that I'm not remotely comfortable talking about. But no.
Well, speaking of baggage,
I don't know how that's a segue, but this has been Not Yet Adults. Yeah, I mean, this was kind of like a nebulous episode. It's very hard to put this one in a box, but I feel like it's okay every now and again to just have this kind of open, freeform, very, I don't know if artsy is the right word, just kind of this open dialogue about just a weird subject. So, alrighty. Well, folks, this has been episode 29 of the Not Yet Adults podcast. Remember, you can get the podcast every Monday and Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time on YouTube, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, and all sorts of podcast services. We're also on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Not Yet Adults, as well as on our own subreddit, r/Not Yet Adults, which you should definitely check out if you have the time. If you have even more time, head on over to iTunes or Apple Podcast if you're on iOS. Leave us a rating and review there. It takes just a couple minutes out of your day, but it is an enormous help to us that we would very much appreciate. We will be back on Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time talking about something new, and we are very much looking forward to it. So thanks for listening. And until next time, this has been Not Yet Adults.
Goodbye. Bye. Bye.